some people might have this sense, especially I think with us, because like we do not see China currently as communist. We do not, look up to Cuba as like an example to be emulated. We don't think Venezuela is socialist. We also, as you were just saying, we are critical of the Soviet Union, and we do not, we're not Stalinists or pro Stalin in any way. Is there a fear that we are just perpetually in this sort of cycle of like, oh, this wasn't real socialism. Oh, this wasn't real socialism. Oh, but no, real socialism would be like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, I think, the experiment, like sort of like, what is it, trial and error of a Marxist or materialist, historical materialist framework, right? And there, like I said about the Soviet Union, like there are concrete reasons why those don't represent a socialist society. It's not as if we're just like, we don't like it, so it's not socialist, and we try to like rewrite that history. I think what we can say is that it's not that we're pulling these declarations or characterizations out of the sky and just sort of giving, well, socialism is only when it works, right? Only when there's a successful one where we'll be like, yes, this is socialism. And we do have an example from the early years of the Soviet Union, and so I think that is something that we can sort of hold on to, and looking at like the present moment as well. And I guess one part of this that I didn't mention before, but I think is really important as well, is that a huge part of the failure of these projects is due to the fact that they tried to enact socialist projects in a single country, right? I mean, like Lenin said, like, without Germany having a revolution in the 20th century, like Russia was kind of doomed. I mean, I'm paraphrasing quite literally, but I think that this is part of the problem, is that capitalism is a global system, and therefore socialism will also have to be a global system. And I think that that's where it kind of also gets sticky. And so I think when we talk about the kind of movement we need, what kind of organizations we need, they have to also be inherently internationalist, anti-imperialist, like fighting those systems from all fronts, because that's what will enable these projects to succeed, is sort of this domino effect of revolutions and remaking of society, social revolutions across multiple national lines. And that kind of seems like a huge insurmountable task, right? Like saying that, you're like, get out of here. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's so
Yeah.
abstract. Like, it sounds like too much. But on the other hand, we can even look at examples of like the movements that we see today, like for Palestine, for example. Like, those are global movements, right? Like, those are people working in their individual countries against their particular governments who are supporting the state of Israel, but at the same time fighting for Palestinian liberation. Like, our movements are global. But the key is, I think, to think about how to harness that organization, to what end, to get on, the same page about the centrality of like the working class, all of these questions of strategy that I think we've explored in other episodes. But I did want to add that aspect, is that like socialism in one country can't work, and therefore like these projects were kind of doomed to fail in a sense. And not because, oh, like their leaders were terrible or whatever, blah 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 blah, necessarily. In some cases, yes, but on the other hand, because capitalism is a global system that puts immense pressure and repression, and tries to root out these social upheavals.